Okay. I'm going to read from this. Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan. And tonight I'm going to talk probably really fast about architecture, not buildings, styles, or icons of vehicles of thought or capital or global warming, although it is all these things, but instead to see it as a middle scale for design between tiny Internet of Things and big satellite networks. We live in the mid-range of that big sweep of design scales, and in the middle of laws, technologies, financial instruments, and other things that cover the planet. We live in spatial organizations and also administrative organizations. I call these very large organizations. So I'm going to quickly show you a few examples of what I mean, things that show how very large organizations are changing the built environment. And these are spaces of border crossings, of farmlands, of prisons, of airports, and spaces of the air itself. Take the lowly automotive toll plaza. I mean, how can we even call it a plaza? It's hardly a social space or a civic space. The road widens where traffic slows down. It's an inverse diagram of speed. But thanks to RFID payment and border control agreements, we can start to reclaim and repurpose lots of this space. Around the Great Lakes regions in the United States, there are dozens of these. At each, engines idle and produce tons of emissions as commuters await their crossing between the US and Canada. It's an ecological event as much as it is economic or cultural for these people. If you mask out lands and buildings previously devoted to the plaza and its unfortunate human toll collectors, a vast surplus of space appears as a binational zone, one that can host water remediation, recreation, worship, commerce, things in a classical agora. Call it Niagara. Floating on the national borderline dividing the Niagara River, a platform station can monitor water quality, thereby honoring an 1812 treaty between the two countries. It's accessible from the existing bridge, but only by a ramp so steep that only a driverless vehicle can navigate. The seasonal sink hosts ice skating in the winter and a fish pond in the summer. Its edges spiral upward, a continuous path for cyclists from both countries intertwining with one another, but existing in neither. Niagara's spaces follow the same protocols as the technologies that brought them about at the toll plaza, but toward other ends. Also quintessentially American is big agriculture. Industrial farms increasingly use GPS-driven equipment and remote machine vision to sense soil quality for moisture, nitrogen, and so on. Satellites are in what you could call read-write mode, but still at the service of monocultures. But we all read landscape now through satellites. In our browsers, what if we wrote polycultures instead with a small modification to the tractor seed hopper? What could we all read from the results? Images, logos, crop view like street view to tell us what's growing, who farms there? What about patterns of plantings that correspond to soil sedimentation, humidity, and so on, but with a seasonal change? These here are from a series of studies on a site in Northern California, one that we hope to test with a community-supported agriculture and imagine a change in the economies of scale. While not uniquely American, the US has made use of electronic monitoring for over 35 years, with hundreds of thousands of inmates and parolees. The cuff is like the latecomers in the quantified self movement. Think of the Nike Fuel Band or the Fitbit, a lucrative private industry, but made with interstate law enforcement agencies. You could say it turns the panopticon inside out. This prison model was conceived by philosopher Jeremy Bentham and famously described later by Michel Foucault as planting the guard in the prisoner's consciousness, thanks to the central tower and surrounding cell block. With electronic monitoring and live online maps, everyone everywhere is the guard. The city is blanketed in curfews, exclusion zones, and inclusion zones, schools, stalking victims, or just staying between a workplace and home. Prison functions are outsourced to the city itself. It's filled with ambiguities and praised from the left and the right. Thumbs here, lean forward, breathe into this. Airport immigrations is a veritable Simon Says now for biometrics. The data collected remains invisible and unexplained to our new citizens and visitors, just like the foreign policy that lets them in or keeps them out. The last to gain understanding of all this are children. A combination workshop, play structure, and web archive, this project starts with a mapping and storytelling exercise at a neighborhood center in Buffalo, New York. Kids here come mostly from Burma, Somalia, and Sudan. They record their paths on the walls and what they gained and lost along the way. Over days, the kids then play in a big felt amorphous space, big enough for two. It's a soft, floppy geodesic, part urban spectacle and part recording booth. Kids look into a hole or touch a surface with both thumbs. They get sensed and they start telling their migration stories. The thing's electronics then mine responses to plot paths to an online map with dates. Each path then linked with a corresponding immigration policy to reveal for the kids some of the information infrastructure in global migrations today and to empower them with some self-identity and claim to place. And finally, what about the air itself, imbued as it is with so much electromagnetic frequency radiation? Public health agencies around the world regulate warning labels for cell phones differently, suggestive of different anatomical models and instruments at the doctor's office. How might these play out over time? Imagine a set of fictions for the next decades and places where EMF, culture, and law coalesce in the air and in our bodies, where Dutch roof tiles block EMF, but bike seats channel it toward planned sterility, to population control in a sexually liberated land. These are some of the spaces of very large organizations today and to come. Thank you.